Hey Sam, it's so great to have you here today. I'm so excited to talk with you. And I really always appreciate like checking in on your YouTube channel, and it's so wonderful. You have so many incredible videos there. I highly recommend everyone go and check out Sam's YouTube channel. We'll make sure the link is in the description below. But I'm really excited to talk with you today because we're talking about a subject very near and dear to our hearts, which is being mothers and being creatives, and sort of how do we hold those two things in dialectic.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I I love this topic because and it's a topic I think about a lot because before I became a mother, I was very creative, and then when I became a mother, I actually from your channel I learned about demands and pressures. I saw all these demands appear, and and I had a need for that and to nurture my children, but that need for creativity didn't go away. And I think there's something very interesting that happens when you become a mother. Um, you, it's almost like a balancing act. Like you're just thrown into this world of having all these demands that just take everything out of you, but then also having this very, very strong will to create. And it's learning how to balance those. That is just a constant struggle. It's like a push and pull. Like when I am attending to those demands with my children and nurturing them, I have a longing to be creative. But then when I am spending too much time being creative, then those demands are neglected. And so it's really just a struggle either way.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that. I find myself often just within a day, like, obviously like creating some sort of rhythm helps, I'll just admit, like, I'm not always great with being like hyper consistent with schedules, but because I homeschool, I have to have some sort of schedule, some sort of rhythm that can kind of keep things sustainable, throughout the week, and gives the kids a sense of that rhythm as well, and being able to get the things done that, or try our best to get the things done that we might want to get done in a day, which honestly looks like a lot of, I mean, we could talk about homeschooling another time, which would be a really fun subject, but a lot of it is like, exploration of interest for the children, and then kind of providing resources for that, and like time and my attention to help with questions or thoughts. And, we'll do worksheets, make sure we do our subjects and all of that. But yeah, just like that. And then the house, I mean, just cooking meals, like putting laundry away. So I find myself often just like sneaking, I'll have like a book in one hand, and I'm talking to the kids. Like, it's like I often will find myself multitasking, like wanting to sneak, or just like in those little windows where we just maybe finished, I don't know, we just finished lessons or something. When I really should be putting away laundry, I like almost go and like go read, take the book I'm reading and go back to like trying to read just a few more pages, and then I'll put it away, and then get back to like, putting away, the 2 or 3 laundry baskets that I probably neglected because I was trying to sneak in more reading. And then, but I think in some ways, like there can be benefits to that of maybe the children seeing that, oh, like mommy's reading. I know that watching my mother read as a young girl was it was really, I always struck me like, mommy's so curious. I love that. Like, she's so interested in just learning and reading. So it always impacted me in a positive way. And also, like, she was extremely, she gave all her attention. Like, it's not like she just always was reading books, she probably snuck it in like me, stuck in a couple, literally like a paragraph or 2 here and there. Maybe like you'll find other times in the day when the kids go to bed were for longer reading, but it's like, she would do that, like just little, I would see her reading here and there, and then, but other than that, like she'd be giving her full attention to, to us as her children. And so like, I think I'm similar in that way, where I'll sneak in some like scribble down some lines for a poem, read a little bit of a book, but really like, I do also feel like when the children are in my presence, I definitely am a person who's like, in I like to be where I am, and that's hard to sometimes be able to do that well, or like perfectly, or even good at all, because sometimes you are tired and you're like almost mentally checked out, you know.
Yes.
You're like wake up, like you know, get yourself together, like be here with the children and really like engage and listen to what they're saying. And I really do. I think I try my best to do that. But you know, there is a lot of demand where there's a lot of questions and lots of things that they want you to see. And so kind of just like remembering to kind of have one's head in the game for that, to be like, yes, I am paying attention. I'm going to be very present because I know that matters. Who doesn't want like to have somebody's full attention when they're being spoken to or something like that, you know? So yeah, so but in giving that, extending that to the children, it's like, you know, obviously I'm not giving some of the attention to some of the other studying or writing or reading or whatever. And I don't know, I think the way of just like reading a couple pages here and there, like writing down a couple lines, I try to do that too, so that it's like it is building. Like that's why one of the biggest things that I think I've learned in motherhood with creating is that it's like a compounding effect, right? Like it's little bits at a time that then like can build over time. And yes, albeit slowly, but like you're still doing something toward that. And there's a lot of reciprocity. Like there's a lot that in mothering you learn about life, you learn about like the intensities of life, and just like the hardship, but also the joys. And so I think that informs a lot of the things too that, you know, I'll go and write, or like what I read reflects back onto the mothering process itself. So there is definitely a dialectic. It's kind of figuring out the time factor of that dialectic.
Yes, there's not enough time in the day. And also to add to that, I think it's almost a superpower for us with the mental load that we have and we carry. I think it's pretty amazing all that we can accomplish with all the tasks that we have to do, because there's a lot of invisible things that people don't see that we just take care of. It's like planning meals, going to appointments, and it's like we carry it all in our head.
Yes.
But then we're also studying at the same time. And I don't even know how I do that.
Like, some of them, like, I think I might be crazy. Like, it's just, you know, like
definitely.
Absolutely.
And then I will have some days where the demands will be really high, but the will to create is so strong that I will stay up until 2-3 a.m. and then I'll get up at 5 and I'll ask myself, how does anybody not sleep? Because there's just not enough time to get everything done. And I thought a long time about the concept of having a type of village. And when I say village, I don't mean getting together for potlucks all the time. Well, that's nice, but it's almost like a structure, like a mindset that helps nurture both motherhood and creativity for women, that relieves that burden of the mental load. Because it's so important. Both motherhood and creativity are so important. But it's like I feel like the way that society goes about it right now, it's kind of like it's a lose-lose situation. Like you're giving up something. And I found that I personally isolated myself, and I, for the longest time, I didn't really know why. And I think there's 2 factors I can think of why I isolate myself in motherhood, because I just have this idea of like, oh, I should be able to carry all of this myself. I should be able to do all of this mental load myself and create at the same time, but it's not sustainable. Right. And so one of the things that I thought of was social media, but thinking deeper than that, because it's easy to just say, oh, it's just because of social media that we isolate ourselves. Um, I think there's this facade in social media, and I like to call it the, oh gosh, what did I call it? Uh, the polarizing curate curated story effect.
Mhm.
So what I see in social media is two very polarizing thoughts on motherhood. It's either it is hopeless. We don't get any help at all. We can't create it all. We can't be ourselves. We're just, the demands are too high. Or the other side where it's like, you're the only person in your own way. You can do it all. You can create. You can take care of your children. And it's just, it kind of, I think those polarizing stories that are seen on social media can be very not only confusing, but it really just messes with your mind. And I think that may have contributed to some of a lot of the isolation that we see in motherhood today.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah, I definitely think, there is the isolation is pretty wild because, it's kind of a, it's almost like this, I don't know how to put this in a way that doesn't sound like completely like negative, but it can kind of feel like, it can feel a little bit like a perfect storm because the more you, and maybe it's just like the way that you and I tend to be, Sam. Like I feel like there might be some similarities in how we maybe feel, when we are encountering this unique position of being like having a very strong will, a very strong like hunger to create, but also having a very strong will to be a mother and present mother. It's like, so but it can kind of feel a little bit like, it sort of comes all at the same time. And then sometimes like, I don't know, for some other people, I guess maybe they like get extra outside of themselves or whatever. And like they do the opposite of isolate to handle or cope. But I think that there might be people who, I think creatives tend to do this, that where there can be this isolation, and isolation kind of like you kind of get further into yourself and you're already in your own head with your creative stuff. And then, you've got in your own head about like just the normal stuff that us moms can worry about or think about. Like, are the kids okay? Like, what am I making for dinner? What am I, all of those things. And just the bigger questions too, like, am I doing anything right as a mother? Like, am I raising good human beings? Like big questions like that like just feel very weighty, but like at the end of the day, it's kind of like you can't take that all on yourself, because I think ultimately, like I do believe that we are kind of stewards. We're almost like we get to be caretakers for children that are ultimately, from God and going to in their own purposes. One day they'll have their own lives, and so, but we are the ones making sure that they're like staying alive, and hopefully thriving like every day, lives are on the line in a sense, like they're literally like, are they safe? Is something like breaking and hurting them, because they're just, it's a lot of like moving around, grabbing things, asking questions, doing this, climbing on counters, it's just like, that's what it's like. And I think that level, I don't know if people are always aware quite of the level of chaos, honestly, that like moms are just dealing with like regularly, like constantly, almost relentlessly. And I love it. Like I'm probably a very chaotic person, so it kind of bodes well with me. But there's a lot of creative energy and chaotic energy that I think I have. But it's just like it is a lot. It can be a lot, and so sometimes you just kind of get like you're overstimulated in a sense. Even though I love stimulation, that's the other weird thing about it. Is like I think people who are creative really like thrive off of stimulation, but then there's a lot of stimulation that's like not, you're not picking like, oh, I'm going to choose Kierkegaard to stimulate my mind on this topic. It's like it's kind of random, not random, but it's spontaneous, it's impromptu chaos because suddenly like the thing you just put away is being dragged back out again, or like, and so I think that it's interesting because like you can kind of just be like, you almost go further inside to almost go into like, I don't know, it's almost like this coping mechanism, like not, I don't mean to use the word coping so much, but there is a way in which you're just like, I'm not sure if I have the capacity to handle this exactly, but I'm going to do the best I can. But sometimes you almost just kind of recess a lot, like there's a lot that kind of just gets pushed further into yourself, so that like whatever's at the front can just be like your ability to do what you need to do in those moments, like for the whole day of like the moment to moment things that you have to do. And I don't know, I think there can be a lot, like the West in particular, and I don't know, like I don't know if there's some unicorn place where there's the perfect village setup. I think that it can probably be created, but we've talked a little bit about this off record, where it can be a little bit difficult to know how to create that. You know, that's another additional thing you have to figure out how to do. And you know, are there people you trust, like that you can kind of gel with and like connect with and be able to understand one another? And you know, there's just a whole lot of questions that come up with that. And what's the logistics of that? Like, are you all even near each other? Like, so I guess what I mean to say is like the village idea is really beautiful to me, and I feel it so much, like I really do. And it's kind of hard to know how to, I don't know, the topic in general is probably like, and I appreciate talking about it, but it's also like, how does one go about talking about it and still acknowledge the beautiful things about motherhood and wonderful things that are really a joy? But it is a real, you know, you have to like understand that there's a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of like just having to get tougher, like emotionally, I guess, and like to handle some of the consistent things you'll have to do. But I think like a village can help, because then you're like, oh, we all understand. We get what it's like to be a mom. We get what it's like to have to change another diaper, or like, you know, do like think about it, like, and you're not just the only one thinking about what the meal is going to be, you know. And I think like, I wonder, there are some cultures that stay closer to their extended families, you know, where their extended family is much closer to them. And there's a lot more of like the aunts and the moms and the sisters kind of all like cooking, sharing, doing there's all of that. And that's such a beautiful, that's like kind of probably the closest thing that I feel of a village type sense, is like when I'm with my mom and my sisters, you know, but like we don't all live in the same area, so that doesn't happen like regularly. But I think, yeah, I think there's just something about like, I hear, you know, you're right up on Instagram, you'll hear both sides of the story, like, you know, you can and should be able to do it all. And then the other side is like, nobody's helping us, you know. And, you know, I think that like, there's a way in which like, I really value being able to be, you know, persevere through things. But there also can be like, if you are never willing to like ask for help or find a way to shoulder, like be able to shoulder that better with fellow women and mothers, like there is that isolation. And then like you just, like it ultimately like you do have to find a way to sort of crawl out and realize that like, you're not alone. It's a very weird thing, because motherhood presents a type of alone that's so different than any other type of like alone or lonely feeling, because you're not alone. Like you're constantly not alone with have your children there, which is wonderful. Like I feel so thankful to be able to be with them. But it's also like, you do feel quite lonely, especially in the way Western mothering is done in general. It's like you are just by yourself doing it most of the time. And so, you know, it's kind of like, how do we, that aspect of like the doing it by yourself, it's like, I don't know, there's something that just really makes me feel like we weren't really meant to do it like by ourselves. And yet we find ourselves doing it by ourselves for the most part. I mean, obviously like really, really blessed to have like people you can call in, obviously a husband, family, you know, siblings, that's wonderful. But it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of it's just different, like and I don't know if it's just the thought process of like, we should just be able to do it ourselves. I don't know. I definitely can feel that sense of like, well, you know, you just should be able to. It's like, okay, but is that realistic? Like, what is that working out for you? Like, I don't know. I mean, and I guess for me, I often just accept that there are seasons. There's seasons for everything, you know, there's seasons. And so I accept that there's seasons I'm not going to be having my creative work on the forefront. My creative work is
Yeah.
to be a mother. And so that's what I put on the forefront, and that's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. But like, what do we do with that kind of pesky will to create? Like, and that's where for
Yeah.
me, it's always about like just the compounding. I just do it when I can. And sometimes it means a little less sleep, like you're saying, like staying up at night to do certain things. And honestly, like I just can't help it. Like I cannot help just
Mm.
asking questions or wanting to read or thinking about stuff a lot, or it's I don't know. It's not like I don't, maybe there's an off button somewhere, but I can't find it. So it just keeps
I
going.
can't find it either.
Yeah.
Yeah, it keeps going for me too. And I think as creatives, we naturally want to isolate ourselves
Mm-hmm.
because I found that in order to create, in order to do things like write poetry or study something like Heidegger, I have to be alone because
Yeah.
If I have my kids next to me, asking questions, that I can't concentrate and study in the way that I need to study to understand something. Or I can't go deep in my thoughts and figure out the best possible way to write a poem, right? And I that's a real struggle. But I think you're really right about the compounding thing too, because when I do YouTube videos, it's always in between, like during my youngest nap time, and then I'll have an activity set up with my oldest, so I can just do that quickly, and then I'll just write up a script at night when I can. Um, Also, when you were talking about living near family
Yeah.
and being close to people that you know, I have lived in many, many places and I've traveled around all over. I've lived in places with like 8,000 people in a town, and then I've lived in places with 1 million people. And so there is just such a difference in the way people live their lives in a city versus a very small town. When I was in the city, it was almost, at first I thought, oh, this is going to be great because I'll have so many opportunities to do things and see other mothers. We're going to be in a big neighborhood. But come to find out, it was overwhelming because now I have all these people to choose to get to know, but who do I choose?
Yeah.
Where in the small town, it's been kind of nice because you already know most of the people in the town already. And if you're introduced to somebody, they're usually a mutual friend of somebody that you know. So that's easier in a way. But then also you're limited to who you can meet. And so the people in the small town that you live in might not have the same interests that you have. Like, I don't know anybody in the small town that wants to study philosophy or theology or any of that stuff with me.
Yeah.
So that can be really hard too. And but also I, having people to just be like, hey, can I have you watch my kids for just a couple hours so I can write a poem or something, and having people who understand your need to create, that is really, really wonderful. And for a while I thought about starting up a Facebook group of mothers in town, but then I thought, well, is that counterintuitive? Because then it's back online and it's not actually getting out and taking that leap of faith and meeting people in person and doing activities instead of just talking online and being we'll meet or saying we'll meet up and then you don't actually meet up. and,
Yes. Yes.
and that's difficult as well too, because I've been starting to take out my girls like every single day into town just doing an activity, and it has helped me meet people, but it's also like, oh, I have to talk to people. I have to make small talk. I don't know how to do that.
Small talk. The struggle is real. The struggle is there. No, it's funny. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's funny because I think too, like I realized that like a lot of it too is like, and this maybe is just human nature to kind of like, I know that there's things that I maybe want to see realized in terms of like community, like in real day life, but then I also know myself and how like getting out and like I love meeting new people. I can have like I'm actually like can find small talk quite interesting for, I mean, like I usually try to get it into like, well, what is the person interested in, and like really tap into something that they're excited about, because then I can see like, oh, what lights them up, what do they like to talk about, instead of it just being the small talk, because there's also only so long that small talk can last. Like, okay, you've exhausted most of the small talk topics, now you can maybe jump into something like, I think for us types, like us type of mothers, is that even grammatically correct, there is a craving for, there's a desire for deeper conversation, for like talking about ideas. And that is, that can be kind of like rare, like I remember, just sometimes when you maybe get into some of the like, I don't, moms groups or things like that. And like, thank God for other moms that you can always like learn from people and like enjoy their company and like just enjoy the fact that the kids get to play with one another. But there is, I don't know, it's kind of like feeling a bit different, like you feel a bit different in that group. And I don't know, I usually don't let that stop me. I'm not very shy, so I'm going to still engage and like, it really just try to appreciate the time and the people who are around me. But there can be sort of like feeling a bit different in terms of just maybe the things you have an inclination to talk about, and I don't know, there can be a balance. Sometimes it's nice to just be with people who are just like, can talk about the things that are related to the things you are dealing with on a very daily basis, like children and meal planning and stuff. But there is something where it's like, can we, and I don't know, I think for me, I often just try to go there and see, like, some people will want to engage on that and some people won't. And you might find like you might be pleasantly, well, I know it's pleasant because I enjoy the deeper topics, but like there's a place for both. There's a place for the small talk and for the deeper talking. But it can be like that's really cool to hear somebody's perspective who maybe like on the initial would be like, oh, maybe it would just stay on a more small talk level, but then they kind of you see that they suddenly like want to go deeper or offer sort of like they kind of pick it up and they kind of keep it going with talking about some ideas or things like that. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a place for both, but I think that it is kind of hard to sometimes describe the sort of like this, like you're saying, the will to create, and I don't know, like I don't know if it can really be explained or whatever. I think it just is. And then you might find people who really connect with that or not. But the thing is, like in this day and age, like you're saying, it's a lot of like the women and moms who do feel this need to like just literally just try to find some time to write a poem, like I do. Like I totally get that. I really get that. It's like, oh, they're not in my town. They're not around. And like there is something that kind of can feel quite sad about that, like, because it's almost like, oh, like it's, I think we've talked about this offline too, where it's like there's something that would be like, oh, that would be so nice to be able to just like you and I be near each other and we can help each other out with like our own kids, and like we get it, like we get the need to write a poem. And it's hard because it kind of looks like, but why a poem? Like you have dinner, like you should be starting dinner, you should be doing this. But it's also like, well, I know, but like I have to get this out. I need to get this out of my system somehow. Like I need to put it somewhere. And I, for whatever reason, feel like I should, and like, and it's just a compelling feeling. It's a compelling feeling. And that's really the best I can describe it. But the other thing too is you don't always need massive amounts of time. Like I said, I've made it work where I can kind of try to be efficient, like make it quick, write the poem, even if it's a couple lines. And then if I do need to come back to it, I can come back to it when I have a little bit more wiggle room, when the kids are asleep. But like, it doesn't take, sometimes it's just those little windows, right? And it's like, well, why is it like 15 minutes of me doing that? Then I can get to dinner. I like want to try and do it both, like do both of them. And I don't know, I wonder if that's just like, the nature of things, and I don't know, like maybe this could be a good question to consider, but like, what do you think are the prospects, Sam, for like a village of that nature, where it could be like creative mothers who are able to kind of support one another in their unique sort of, in their difference that might be, you know, again, everybody is unique in their own amazing way, but it's just like, I think there is something that's a bit different for the mother who is like really fully in on, like, you know, fully in her motherhood, but also fully in her creative, you know, desire or creative will, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest problems is that it comes at random times, like
Yes.
you were saying,
Oh my
and,
gosh.
and
Yes.
I'm just like, I need to do
Right.
this,
Yes, I
but I
know.
can't because I have to cook
I
dinner.
know.
I have
Yes.
to feed people.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
another problem that I come across is that when I start, I tend to really hyper focus. It's like if I
Yes.
start on a chapter of studying, I'm going to be there for 3 or 4 hours. So it's like if I have the will to do it, it's just like I'm constantly thinking about that while doing other things, and then I'm not being attentive to my children. And just the other day, I was reading a book, and then my youngest, she keeps climbing on tables because she's learned to do that now, and so I'm just like constantly picking her off the table while reading my book, and I'm trying to like retain the information, and that's so hard. So it's like, how do we get out and we find these people? And I wonder if going out into the community and or even creating more workshops for women who like to be creative to get together, so they can just meet.
Yeah.
And so when those women meet, they understand each other, and then they can give each other that time that
Yeah.
they need, because they're like, yes, I know you need that time. So drop your kid off one day for a couple hours if you need.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
yeah.
I think you're so right about the fact that it kind of comes in like, sorry, just like knocked out my headphones, that it's like, it is like, it hits just all of a sudden, like inspiration
Mhm.
tends to do, or like you suddenly, you know, there, for me, it's like very concrete lines of poetry of like wording, you know, and it's like, if I don't
Yeah.
write this down now, I'm not gonna, well, I think I'll remember it, and I don't usually. Like, I mean, I try, and sometimes I do, but
Mhm.
it's, I mean, just with all the other stuff you have going through your head, you know, I really do just try to write it down, so I don't have to like, you know, hold even more inside my head. And so yeah, but it is pretty unexpected. So
Yeah.
it's sometimes I think like it's hard to sort of plan. You don't, it's not like you can be like, well, just like make a plan for it. Well, it's not, it's hard to make a plan for that sometimes, you know.
Mhm.
But I mean, I think that's why I think the best system that I have found is just to be able to do, again, do the little bits and like understand that like respect that's enough for now, you know. And you know, when you can do it when you can. But I definitely
Yeah.
resonate with the like the reading while you're trying to do things. And like I just, I mean, it's crazy. Like sometimes it's just like I don't know, I'm pretty ravenous. Like I need to make sure to eat, you know, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but like
Mhm.
and then obviously feed the children, but it's just like, and the family, and it's just like I don't know, sometimes though I'm just like so riveted by, you know, some chapter I'm reading, like that it's like
Yeah.
I just want to like kind of, and you know, there's dots connecting and like, you know, poems on the side bubbling over. And then, but it's like, I really need to like cook. Why can't I don't know. It's something I find like prioritizing very challenging, because I'm just like,
Oh, me too. Me
it's just
too.
like, I should be cooking. Like, for goodness sakes, you've got a headache. Like, you're hungry. Like, you should be cooking and eating, and you know. And it's just like, but I'm like consuming, like reading. That's another
Mhm.
consuming for me. And so, I think that it's, I think sometimes just kind of like in those moments of just, okay, you have to think about like what's the best way to use time. And I'm certainly not a master of that at all, but it's just kind of like figuring out, okay, maybe this is not the best time to be reading, like while I'm cooking. Maybe once the thing's in the oven and it's cooking, then like, and the children, yeah, it's usually a time where like they're riding bicycles on the driveway or things like that, and maybe I could just sit on the porch and read. for a couple minutes until
Mhm.
somebody maybe needs something. Um, but yeah, I don't know. And as we're talking, Sam, I really like kind of want to push back a bit on just this idea. I've been thinking a lot about like desire lately in general,
Mhm.
especially from like a mystical approach. But the point is like even this desire that I have, for creating, reading, writing, it's like sometimes I'm like, is that me just like craving in a bad way? Like, because sometimes our desires and
Mhm.
cravings can kind of like they can take us out of the present moment, and they end up being
Yeah.
something that can be, um, if not sort of like worked out, then it can be something that can become like now you're not consuming, it's consuming you or something like that. So,
Mhm.
but at the same time, like we've talked about when it comes to like, being able to, there is an expression that's talked a lot about with mothering, especially with young children, where like the idea of losing yourself, and
Mhm.
there, so it's kind of this like, in a sense, you kind of do need to empty yourself completely and be able to be, um, it's like a sacrificial mode to be able to be a mother. Um, but at the same time, if you also have to like, in order to be the best mother you can be, you still have to be present. You still have to be, and like
Mhm.
I think there's something about like doing the creative work that helps me be more mentally present. I know, like because like if I've got a backlog of stuff in my head and I haven't done anything with it, then I feel very, it's like it's almost like there's just, it's weighty a bit. I don't know how to
Yeah.
describe it. And so therefore it's like I'm not always showing up probably the best I could, even though
Mhm.
I'll give it still, like I'll still give it 110% the best I can as a mother. But
Mhm.
it's like it's still, um yeah, it's a weird thing because it's almost like, I think it's a very interesting feeling because there's something of a fullness you feel, and yet there's like, it's almost like your head is so full that there's kind of an empty you feel at the same time because you haven't emptied. I don't know. It's a very interesting interplay between the two that I always find fascinating. But yeah, I think it's kind of like this. Anyways, my main thing is to question that desire. I do think that there's probably a good place, like healthy desires that people have that are worked out, and it's like, oh, it's very fruitful because you're like making something creative and making something that maybe you can even offer other people, and even your children. Your
Yeah.
children can see that, like, oh, mom loves to like do this, and what's the thing I love to do? Like that's what I always think about, intrinsic motivation, especially with homeschooling. And so it's like,
Yeah.
what do they love to do? What makes them light up? So I think there's great things like that are, I almost want to call them just like the things that make you tick or whatever that you're just designed
Mhm.
for. And that's a good thing. There's nothing bad about it. But there is a part of me that wonders, like, is it just like this craving I have to satisfy in like writing and reading? So I don't know. But what are your thoughts, Sam?
I definitely agree with that, and I think, how you were saying about the consuming you,
Yeah.
the creative consuming you, I have definitely had those moments where I just don't eat, and but then and that's bad too for my children because then they see me not eating and not taking care of myself, and they need to see me in the present moment for them and also taking care of myself, but then also creating is taking care of myself too. So
Oh my
it,
gosh, yes. I get that so
uh,
much.
there's just so many variables when you're a mother and you're creative at the same time that it almost feels like just an overload. But
Oh yeah.
then there are moments, and I don't know if you feel this too, but there are some moments where it feels like everything is just going smoothly. It's like you're creating and you're also being present as a mom. And there are those small moments that I'll get, and I'll like try to hold on to them. Um, and so I think I try to learn from those moments. It's like, um, when my daughter sees me reading, then that makes her want to read. And so that's an example of a moment that flows really well. Um, or if I'm writing and then my daughter's like, "Oh, I want to learn how to write." That's another example too. Um, or if what I like to do a lot of the time is I like to sing poetry, and I'll sing poetry to my daughters, and they get to participate in that and be creative in that. And so sometimes the creative world and the world of being a mother intermix, and I love those moments.
Oh yeah, I love those moments too. I love those moments too. And I mean, it's it's like I think like I don't know, I've always loved children. Like I was a nanny babysitter for all of my life. It's pretty much my
Mhm.
main job before becoming a mom. And I just I've always been just incredibly drawn to children's curiosity, their fascination in the world, their energy, and
Mhm.
just their questions, um, and just their creativity, like how they just watching them play, like what they like to play, what they like to do, and
Mhm.
it's just like it's so and then obviously like added level is like it's your own flesh and blood. There's just like this
Yeah.
whole other level of love
Oh.
that you just cannot, it's so hard to even put into words. Like
Mhm.
it's like you just love them so much. It's I don't know. It's wild. It's just a wild love,
Mhm.
um, and it's. I think that there's something about like that. Oh goodness, I'm
Ooh.
sorry. Something
It's
just
okay.
what that was, but I'm assuming it's okay. But yeah, it's there's that like wild love that you feel,
Mhm.
and it definitely like inspires so much in terms of like what I learn and what I want to record or write about or whatever.
Mhm.
And so like I do think there's a lot of things that sometimes we overlook about the value of us actually being creative mothers. Like it's kind of easy to sometimes, especially when we're feeling tired or overwhelmed, where we're just like, oh my gosh, like, it's, I don't know, sometimes it's like, oh, there's just like other people out there who aren't thinking like about this. Like everybody thinks things,
Mhm.
obviously, but it's just like, I don't know, it's just like, is it really like, I don't know, it's almost like, wow, there's just people who just don't maybe ask the questions that I do or like, or think about it like
Mhm.
so deeply or like, and sometimes I
Mhm.
can overthink. That's when I let it like, that's when it gets, that's the thing. I think if I don't end up creating stuff, I do end up in just overthinking land. And that's just bad news bears. I need to kind of
Mhm.
have an outlet for it because otherwise it's not constructive. Um,
Mhm.
but, but to stick to the idea is just that sorry, I lost my train of thought, but it'll come back to me in a second. Just the idea that yeah, the children inspire us right. As being creative mothers, sometimes it can be like, wow, this is seems like a unique challenge, right? Because there's some mothers who
Mhm.
really their only mental load, which is already a big mental load, is like the child rearing and the mothering and the
Mhm.
caring and the home care too, because you're taking care of the house, you're taking care of the
Mhm.
children. And just like their main thing is just like taking care of the kids, like
Mhm.
and that is like it is my main thing, like I'm a stay-at-home mom. But there is this other sort of like you know creative energy that's just like again, it's hard to stop it, really. It's just going to keep going in some direction.
Yeah.
And so I think that there are things maybe we it's can be easy to just be like critical of ourselves, like maybe something's wrong with me, what's wrong with me, why am I like this? But really it's like, no, this is like the way we were designed, this is not a problem, and there can be really great benefits to it. The benefits are that children see in real time what it's like to be interested in things, to learn
Yeah.
about things for yourself, not just because somebody told you to,
Yeah.
so there are real benefits. I think it's just kind of, when you feel like you're having to not get to everything because,
Mhm.
goodness knows my windows haven't been washed in too long because I'm like, because it's
The
like,
same way.
it's like, I need to do that. And like, I will eventually do this, but it's just like,
Mhm.
I have so much, like, it's like putting the kids and then my creative stuff. It's like, those are my two priorities. And then,
Yeah.
yes, I'll make everything else work in terms of the house not being like a complete pigsty. I will take care of it. But it's just, it's like, just, I don't know, it just doesn't like take my interest is just gravitates me towards like putting my nose back into a book, or like
Yeah.
scribbling down some lines, and so for a poem or something. So, or doing recordings. I do enjoy doing recordings as well, which I do through like Anchor. That's a great outlet as well. But sometimes I find it's weird. It's like if I have way too much of a backlog, Sam, then even when I
Mm.
go to try to do the recording, even if I've got like a little window, it's like it's hard for me to kind of get like I'll be very, very hypercritical of like my attempt. You know, I'll maybe do an attempt and I'll just be like, that wasn't good. And I just like won't load it. I won't. And I'm just like, now that was one more thing I could have like had done, but I didn't, because I just, my brain wasn't quite there, because I am trying to fit it, squeeze it in this, like, you know, whatever it is. So I don't know, it's interesting, but like, you know, we have to kind of, I think there's a grace that we have to have for ourselves in this season of life. It's going to be kind of sometimes a little all over the place, but you just, you know, you just kind of have to have grace, like, okay, I did the best I could do on that recording, you know, or I will have to let that one go. That's okay though. I still know what these ideas are. I still think I've learned something from it. But really, like, a lot of my recordings I try to do because, I don't know, for some reason it helped me, or it made me think about something in a new light. And I'd like to offer that to people, you know, in case it might be of use to them, you know, so yeah.
And how you were talking about the backlog, I feel completely the same way. If I have too much that I know I have to get done, and I try to study, I cannot focus at all. And in a way, it makes me really sad when that happens, because it's like, okay, I set this time aside to write, to read or whatever, and it's not working. And when that creativity is not working, it's more on the mental load. And a lot of the time I'll be like, oh, I feel like I can't do all of this at once. But at the same time, we are doing all of it at once. And that is really incredible. When you step back and look at it, we're mothering our children and we're also creating, and that's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. No matter how much we suffer through it, it's what it reveals to us in the end is, it's really, really beautiful. I think for me, the biggest thing is, I've been trying to change my mindset around, when I wake up each morning, instead of saying, I need to do this and this and this and this, because I used to try to do the whole schedule thing too, and it just didn't work. I would do it for like 2 weeks and then I would quit, because my brain just doesn't work that way. So instead of doing that, I kind of wake up and I say, what can I discover today? What can I learn today? What can I experience today with my children? And living life intentionally that way has really helped me a lot more. And also, who can I connect with? Because connection is so important with people. And even though it's hard, and I want to isolate myself and go into myself, like you were saying, I have to know that the struggle to move forward, even though it might be hard, in the end, it is going to be beneficial to me to actually get out and try and connect with other people who maybe not necessarily want to do the same things that I want to do, but who can understand the need for creativity. So if I met somebody who liked to paint, and felt the need to always paint, but they were always watching their children, they understand that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes. I think, and it's funny because it's like, I know it's out there. Like, I know there are other women like that. Like, of course there are. So I don't know. I think, I think it's kind of just like maybe the vulnerability of just like putting yourself out there and saying like, and just being, I think a big thing is like, for me to get over pride in terms of just being like, I can't do it all myself, and I do need help, and I do need other women who are creatives who can understand, and like, and just, you know, it's like, there is just something very reassuring to know that you're not alone in this like project of, you know, mothering and creating. And I something I have thought about doing is like to do a regular 1 day a week where I just maybe can make this connection with some moms and just say like, my house is kind of an open house for you to come and be here, sort of idea. And I don't know, I think that that's definitely something that can be can be done. And I wonder what it is that ends up being like the hang up. Maybe it's just that sometimes too, as a mother, like I don't know, there's just, I don't know if we've ever really been very well versed in like suddenly having to be in a season of life where you have so much you have to fit in, like, and you're just like, so, okay, if I do that for a day regularly on week to week, that would be a good thing. And like, it's this thing, it's like, it's a good thing. It would be a good thing to do. But I guess I'm trying to identify what are the hangups, maybe it's also just the thought of like, wow, maybe if I could have that time, I could be doing, it's also the potentials, right? It's like, well, if I did that every week, is that a day? What if that's a day I want to like, what if I do it does hit with inspiration and I end up just socializing versus like using it as a time where I could be like, okay, I need to go, I need to basically like duck out for a little bit so I can go work on my things and then I'll be back. Like, I don't know. It's almost like there's a time where you're like, well, there's a lot of things maybe that, and this is just human nature. We want a lot of things at the same time. And just realizing like, you might not be able to get all the things that you want at the same time. But you can figure out a way to identify what are the most pressing things that would be help you to be more of a functional human being. And then, be able to try to situate a system or like a rhythm that can incorporate that. But I know myself, like it's funny because it's weird. I feel like I can just be like have like extremes, where it's like I'm very self-isolating, but then I also am like a social butterfly. Like I enjoy meeting people. If people are around, I'm gonna probably talk with them. It was really nice when if you like Daniel and I were part of a creative community center. That was really nice because it was like a place that was just an open door where people would come and study or like practice guitar or whatever. And it was really, really lovely because, you would end up having chances to socialize, but also people would be there to work as well. So I don't know, the space itself can often kind of shape like how and what you're able to do within it. Now, obviously, I'm trying to think like if you add children into that, well, a lot of people, like a lot of times though, like children can play with one another and they get that socialization with each other. And then there can be a sense of like, for the people who want to socialize, they can socialize. For the people who want to go do their work for a little bit, they can go do that. So I mean, it's definitely theoretically possible. Maybe it's just the idea that we have less, like maybe we need to start making our own homes more like common spaces for people. I don't know. It could be an idea. It could be an idea for that.
And I also think the vulnerability of opening yourself up. I know with me, I've always been afraid of what if I meet somebody where I think that they are going to think similar to me and then they don't, and then they're like, well, why don't you want to be with your kids? Why don't you want to always be doing this? And it's like it's so hard to explain to people the need for both.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's hard to make sense of it. It's hard to make sense of it to people about like why is there this need to do a recording? What does it even matter? You're not getting like, are you getting paid for it? Is it for a job? No, it's not. No, it's really not. I don't know what it's for, but I feel compelled to do this. And that's weird. It's like you're not doing it because you like think that 100,000 people are going to listen to it. It's not like maybe one person will listen to it, maybe no one will listen to it, maybe 5 people will listen to it, but there's just something about like getting to express that somewhere and like give it a place, because I think sometimes like but it is a unique thing. I'm not like I said, I don't know if it can really be explained to other people who maybe they probably have their own thing, but this particular thing is maybe not what they have for them, and that's just, it might not be able to be made it might not make a whole lot of sense. But I think everybody, like, I think there are ways in which most moms will have their sort of time, where they find like they take their time to do something for themselves or whatever. Like a lot of the language gets put as like self-care, and like, and I think there can be some problems with that. Like, well, I mean, obviously I'm going to pick it apart. Like, what do we mean by self? What do we mean by care? What do we like, what is this like? Is this just like escapism? But at the same time, like we all are very like as humans, we can find escapes. And I think that like the thing is that there's escapes, and then there's also but there's also avenues, right? There's avenues for
Mhm.
expression. And I think if we don't, if we as creative mothers don't find the avenues for creative expression, then there are other escapes that, you know, become more, you know, like that you're just sort of like, again, it's hard to find that off button for it. So you just kind of will go into that
Mhm.
as escapes. So it's like, no, let's try to, you know, utilize the avenues for creative expression and
Mhm.
connection, because, you know, it's such a joy to be able to connect with people who do understand, like yourself. You know, it's like
Yeah.
and like just incredible philosophy, you know, the world of philosophy and literature, the people I've been able to connect with, it's just such a gift to find people who like, who get it, you know, who just understand, and
Yeah.
they're just doing their own projects too. um so yeah, I think that I don't know, I think that it's, I don't know, I think that I still kind of am going back to this idea of like, what is it exactly that kind of stops us? And maybe it is just the vulnerability idea, like it's just the
Mhm.
idea of like, well, what if it just doesn't quite go the way I thought it was, or maybe it was meant to look like this or be like this, but then
Mhm.
it ended up just not getting utilized in that way. And maybe too, the idea of it just being a day is almost not enough. Like there's a village concept that is day in, day out, you know, and
Yeah.
um, the day in, day out is really what, you know, it's almost like that's where you kind of suddenly, like it's almost like you let yourself relax, you know, you can let yourself
Mhm.
relax in the day in, day out. Kind of like some support mechanisms or whatever you want to call it, where you, I don't know, it's like you, that maybe is where, because you know, like you almost feel like you come to feel relaxed and safe in that place because you know that it's going to be there for you again. And I don't know,
Mhm.
maybe the idea of it, just like the glimpses of it are just like, I don't know, it's like you're more vulnerable with that because you're not sure if that's going to even be there for you to come in the future or something like that, or like, is it
Mhm.
sustainable? Am I the one having to sustain it? And maybe it's fine for you to be the one to have to sustain it because it ends up being so beneficial for you and maybe other mothers who are involved. Um, but yeah, it can, I don't know, it's weird. It's weird when we move away from like, honestly, I just keep going back to the idea of like, I know that this, like the idea of extended family might be this kind of euphoric idea or, you know, unicorn vision of like what a
Mhm.
village could be like, but at the same time I keep thinking about how the further we've gotten away from like the extended family support group, the
Mhm.
more you are having to, it's like it's not just default, it's not like the default and the what's provided there for you is not there, so you have to be the one to do it, and you're already like, well, I'm already doing all the other things, how do I even begin to think about how to make that happen, like this idea of like the
Yeah.
creative village for mothers. You know,
Yeah,
so
right, because it takes so much time and energy, and, I know, I find it's very interesting, with my town is that, people will move away after high school, and they'll go to the big city, and then years later, they'll come back and start families
mhm,
in the
mhm.
small town because everybody's family is here,
Yeah,
and it's like you need that support system to help you.
yeah, yeah.
And I love that idea of the community center though. And if that could be something that, I mean, it's just a small idea now, but if that was something that could be cultivated on
Mhm, mhm,
a national level, where it was just um, there were these community centers in these towns and cities and suburbs and inner cities, just
mhm.
all over, where people could just stop by and create when they wanted to,
Yeah,
and there would be like a daycare to watch the kids, but then you think about how much energy it would take to make those things, and it's just overwhelming.
yeah, and maybe it's like, maybe the idea of, you know how like people have
Yeah.
like local hangouts or whatever, you know, like
Mhm.
um gee, I used to watch Saved by the Bell, and I'm forgetting what their like local hangout was that they would like go to.
Mhm.
But the point of the matter is, it's like it can end up being a cafe or whatever.
Yeah.
But the thing is, with children, it's always unique. Like it's a unique. You can't just go. You know, it's like, well, you could do playgrounds, but you know, playgrounds, if you're outside, like you're depending on the weather or whatever, you know, it's like
Mhm.
how long can that be sustained? Are there bathrooms? Like what if somebody gets
Mhm.
hungry? You know, and that's why I think it's, I don't know, that's why I keep on thinking back to the idea of like homes as a hub, you know, because, you know,
Yeah.
the infrastructure to create like community centers would be another kind of hurdle to think about how to do that.
Yeah.
Now there are like already community spaces like YMCA's or churches and things like that. So I think the main thing is like, it's one of the things that made that such like a, like with the community center we were part of, that was so magical about it, or like it was such a perfect recipe in a sense for this place of like just creating and socializing. But you had the best of both worlds. There was a kitchen there was like, there were bathrooms, there's air conditioning if you needed it, or heating when it was cold. There was so many things. They had like a coffee house vibe upstairs, plenty of space downstairs too, and it was also where there's a lot of foot traffic. So yeah, basically there are some logistical things that can really help in making that space and a place be available to people. I think that sometimes as mothers, maybe like the idea of that, having a space that's just kind of available, it's like you also just sometimes appreciate just kind of stepping out of your zone and like just being able to know you can go somewhere. Just go somewhere, and you don't have to necessarily pay for anything. You can just go, and your kids can be there, and like your kids can enjoy them, enjoy the, what's all going on there. Maybe there's a playground, like I said, or maybe an indoor playground. But it's just like the idea of finding a hub. Some people do start to find, like, they'll just go to the diner and they end up having their conversations with the old, it's like, the older people and the younger people get to have these conversations with each other. And I think we have lost a lot of intergenerational kind of contact and support. I think we don't I don't know. I think there's been kind of I think we need mothers as we're mothering. And so I thank God for the mothers who support me in that. But it's just like, there's something about this idea of like, there is something about needing like that, I don't know how to put it, but basically like intergenerational, and then also across the spectrum of like, there are other mothers who probably are feeling similar to you, you could maybe utilize that common ground together to, maybe solve something there for you guys, or like make a way to kind of help one another in that. But again, it's just kind of the finding and the hubs that are not as, I don't know. It's just like, I don't know if they're the intergenerational thing, and then also the actual spaces, because with children, it's not just going to be a diner, because, then there's something like they're under the table, they're crawling on top of the table, they're taking the syrup bottles, they're pouring the syrup bottles, so it's like, which is great. I love that energy. It's just that it's like, it's not going to work for your mind is so focused on like, are they pouring the syrup? And like, can I exchange that for like can I exchange that for can I exchange that for the coloring pad and like crayons that they have at the diner for, it's like, you're so focused on that then you end up not being able to have as much conversation, and then let alone like your creative, trying to do some sort of creative thing. And like, I want to specify too, I do think mothering is very creative. There's so many so many different hats you wear, so many things you end up doing or playing or imaginary play. There's so much fun in that. But it's just different, because it's definitely more, it's just guided in a different way. It's often guided by the children versus guided by your own, like, oh, I'm really interested in reading, this book by Heidegger, So I don't know. I'm thinking about this just in terms of like hubs, and you're right about people coming back to small towns and then like, being near their family. But it's weird because we don't have a lot of discussion, I think, in primary education and like in education system of like, hey, these things are like only come up in this sort of like, there are scripts about it in a sense, like about, what people kind of should be doing and whatnot, but it's not really, I don't know. I feel like often like our very own biology is almost overlooked in terms of like the idea of, the family unit and the family support as you go into creating your own family. And even the idea of like on the career chart, you're not going to necessarily see father and mother, and I don't know, it's just, it's, I understand that like, it's great to be able to see the other things like the astronaut and the, the painter and all that. That's so good. But it's just kind of like, it's weird how the discussion is just not there. And then I think what ends up happening is like a lot of people just end up in these kind of cubicle type situations mentally, where they're just, again, can feel the sense of like overwhelm and being alone, and it's just like, I don't know, maybe if we were having greater discussions about what it means to have community as As adults, I don't know. I don't know, because a lot of times the community is already built in for you with school and college, and things are always like there's always the newness, the novelty of like a new semester, a new this, a new that, and then you get to like adult life, and it's like it's the same. You've got very similar things you have to do pretty much every day, which is great. You know, you do them to the best of your ability. But I think the creative work infuses a lot of newness. The children infuse a lot of newness because you never know what they're going to say or do or whatever. But there are certain things, tasks you're doing consistently, and I don't know. I think that the community is often just built in there for you. Like you'll at the dining hall, at the places, these hubs where people are, but then there's what are the hubs of adult life, you know, especially when you bring children into the mix of like what hubs are suitable for children too, you know. Maybe it's just the homes again, maybe it's homes could be hubs, but I don't know. These are just some of the thoughts that are coming to mind, you know, on this topic. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. It's like I wish during school I would have been taught more the emotional side that adulthood and motherhood would bring. Like, you know, in school we would be taught the biology of it, but they wouldn't really touch on how much it would actually impact us. And I think that's really interesting to think about too, because when we become mothers and we lose that community life that we had, it's emotionally overwhelming for us. And so I wonder if there's a way that we can, like you were saying, teaching about community in school and how important it is, and also incorporating how when you become a parent, because I think this can also, I can't speak for men because I am not one, but I think this can also apply to men too, because when you're parents, it's like you need that community, but it's like, how do you make the community if you were never taught to how to make one, and it was just there for you?
Oh yeah.
And that is the big question.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, it was just always provided for you, you know, and so yeah, it becomes very, and maybe for some people who again don't have the creative stuff on their head, they're just like, it's simple, you just make a plan and you just do it, and you know, it's just like it just comes together. And I don't know, maybe that's true. I don't know. Maybe my brain just functions kind of differently regarding that. But there is a real sense in which like you are kind of like a fish in the ocean, like a little goldfish just dropped. You had your tank, and then you were dropped in the ocean, and you're just like, okay, how do I exactly make this happen? How do I make this happen on top of like being sleep deprived and like, you know, having constant needs around the clock, you know, when you have little ones and you're nursing and you're, you know, you're preparing meals, and it's just like, I don't know, the level of it, there's, like I said, the intensity is what is felt, I think, a lot in motherhood. And then you're suddenly like, and you have to figure out how to do a community when it's always just been literally provided for you, which is a gift that you know, institutions and other places can do, churches, you know, your parents often do a lot to create that for you. And there's like, oh wait, I'm the parent now. Like, it's like, you know, it's like, oh right, like I have to create that.
And you have to communicate to, like, you have to learn how to communicate. You had people just there for you that you just mingled with during school, and you would just have small talk, and it's like, oh, now I have to learn how to have deep conversations with other people in adulthood. And it's like, how do I do that? I was never taught that in school. I was taught trigonometry.
Yeah, it's crazy, Sam. It's crazy. And you know, like there can be a place for trigonometry, but there's something about the life skills of like navigating life through its stages that is just, I don't know, maybe the thought is like, well, you just can't know until you're there. You can't know what it's like until you're there. But there are certain things that like you could at least be given a heads up about, you know. And maybe that's where the wisdom from elders comes in a lot, like where they can tell you certain things. But I think, I don't know, maybe it's just in our like kind of, I don't know, kind of brash, you know, young, sort of audacious, sort of like, well, you know, I don't know, sometimes when people are young, like, I mean, hopefully we can all still consider ourselves young. But the thing is like when you're in your younger years, it's kind of hard to relate to what somebody who's older says, because you're kind of like, oh, okay, like I get that. But then the experience does come, and it's just like, oh, okay. And also people don't always talk about some of the things that are hard, because like I said, people don't, at least I know for myself, it's like, well, I don't want to complain. I don't want to complain because there's a lot to be, like I said, there's lots to be grateful for. There's so many blessings and so many things to just be joyful about. But the things that are like I remember thinking after giving birth, like with labor, I was like, wow, I feel like I got hit by a bus, like I literally feel it just, yeah.
And it's indescribable too.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You could not describe it to anybody. And so it's like when people ask me, what was it like? What was becoming a mother like? I just can't describe it. And I can't help. I'm like, you just kind of have to experience it for yourself.
Yeah, and that's where the hard part comes in, because it's like we're desiring to know things at younger years about the realities of adult life, but it's like, could we even be ready for the answer then? Like would we be able to handle it or understand it, until the actual experience comes up around. However, it's like, oh, I think maybe people, it's almost like the small talk tracks get going. That's like, we forget there's so much more that can be talked about. Like, oh, when this happens, this will be very hard. And I know you can't understand that fully right now, but if you feel that this is maybe some of the things you can do, or these are some of the things that like helped me out, or whatever, I think sometimes it's almost like we get very narrow in our conversations, especially in mainstream or small talk, that maybe that's why some of these things are not talked about. And I don't think that at younger years, at like 16, that I could necessarily fully understand the experience of, let's say like, postpartum, like once or even labor, like just the intensity of labor, like the intense, and it's like, there's something so incredibly miraculous. There's also like, wow, I thought you had, I don't know why, I don't know. It's like you think you have a baby, and then you're just like functioning normal human person. No, like it's a totally intense physical experience, and your hormones are like, there's just so much newness to all of it. And yeah, maybe I would not have understood that in experience at 16, but even just to understand that like the support that is needed in those times is very important.
Yes.
Like there's just so little discussion. Like you're saying, we do talk about like very strict biology on stuff in school, but I think we forget the implications of that biology, right? Like the kind of communal aspects of that biology, and the emotional things about that biology. It's like that just is not really discussed or connected. And I wonder if that's just because like all subjects are segmented. I always felt this in school. I'm like, why are these things like so separate? They seem to all connect to me, but there's no like interdisciplinary type of study to kind of connect these things that I see a thread through in my mind. But the point of the matter is, it's just that there's very little discussion on it. And I don't know. I think maybe, like I said, maybe it's just because it's hard to put into language, and language will fail to a degree. But also like, I think nevertheless, we maybe could do a bit better with trying, at least. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like at least just to try to talk about it, because it does feel like there can be something that feels quite helpless in such a radically different season of life, where you can feel quite helpless in a sense. And that's in a way a good thing, to realize our own, like, in a sense, poverty as humans, like in a spiritual sense, because I think ultimately that like can turn us toward like, understanding like our creator and God, and like this idea that like, yeah, actually we cannot do really anything apart from God, and the sustainer of life. But it's like, there is a way in which so there's a good thing about recognizing that helplessness and poverty, but there's also a sense in which like, but what do yes, I think there is a big way in which it can turn us towards the transcendent. But the transcendent is also incorporated, like metaphysical things like the transcendent or God are also physical. Like there's a way in which like you can't just, there's that turning to the transcendent should also inform our physicality too, and like how we actually do practices or things that then kind of help support to not just be stuck in the place. Like it's almost like help, you don't go to helplessness just to be stuck there. It's transforming
Yeah.
to be like, you want to transform that, I think, into, yeah, like ultimately the idea of being able to have that transform into a union with the transcendent is ultimately to be able to like
Mhm.
be a fuller human being. And I think a fuller human means to be more functional. I mean, that could be debated, but you know, we could debate what does it even mean to be functional. But the idea is like you know, you can get so stuck in the helplessness that you're just like, oh, like I'm in a rut, or I'm not functioning to like to my
Mhm.
highest capacity. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think something that I've found is so beautiful is that, you know, when I was 16 and I
Mhm.
would read certain stories, I just wouldn't get them.
Yeah.
But the reason I wouldn't get them is because I hadn't gone through the same emotional intensity that was explained in the story. And when I went through that deep emotional turmoil, I would read the story again as an adult and be like, oh, I understand what it was trying to say now. And that is the coolest
Yeah.
feeling ever. It's like there are so many texts that I've come back to that I'm like, I see this, I'm able to see this at a deeper level than what I did. And so I can appreciate kind of, I mean, being in that naive place when I was younger, and having to struggle and learn through life. And the more I struggled, the more I learned, the more I learned, the more I discovered.
Mhm.
And maybe that's just because I am very creative in nature, but yeah, I just think that there's just something so wonderful to that. And so we do need to have those times where it's very difficult for us to learn. And
Mhm. Mhm.
we can try our best to teach the next generation, but they in turn have to struggle and endure and go through their own things as well,
Yeah.
so that they can see kind of the beauty in what is revealed to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, like that's absolutely right. And you know, there's kind of the idea of like, you know, when an elder or parent will say like, you know, one day you'll understand, you know, it's
Yeah,
like, you know, it's like,
yeah.
yeah, that's probably true. And I don't know, I feel like as you know, teenager, I was like not rebellious at all. Like I
Oh
really
no, me
like,
neither.
yeah, me neither. Not at all. Like I would, you know, if my parents told me something, I'd be like, you know, I would totally believe, you know, because I just trust them very much, have a very good relationship with them. So it's like, I believe them.
Mhm,
I knew that what they were saying was wiser than what I knew, or, you know, I knew that they
mhm.
had wisdom to offer. And so I would just be like, even if I can't understand it fully, I would listen and just say, you know, I would, they wouldn't really ever use that phrase with me so much, like one day you'll understand, but they might say it in like, not a mean way, just kind of like one day you'll understand
Yeah,
more about what I'm talking about, like not in a, you know, kind of like jab sort of way. They just say it.
yeah.
And I'd be like, yeah, you know, you're right. Like and I was just thankful that they would take the time to want to talk to me about certain things.
Mhm.
Um, and it's interesting because like so yeah, to have that is a real gift. To have people speak into that. But then there is just a part of it where it's like you may not understand until you're older. You may not understand
Yeah.
until you kind of go through it yourself. But I think sometimes like that can feel very frustrating for us as humans, because we're like,
Mhm.
I don't want to make mistakes. I don't want to mess up. And messing
Yeah.
up can feel like hard. It can feel painful. And also because like we're in constant nexus, like, you know, it's, I don't know, it's easier as like you know, an 18-year-old to make a mistake. But like when you're when you have a family, you know, like it's like there just feels like
Yeah.
so much more, like it's just so, there's, the stakes are so much higher, you know,
Yeah,
and you feel
and
like,
there's
yeah, so go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. And there's times when I think, well, what if I put too much time in my creativity and in my studying, and my children grow up, and this is just me spiraling, but my children grow up and be like, "Mom, you didn't give me enough attention as a child." And then I just feel so bad because it's like I tried the best I could with both.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, you're not alone. You're not alone in feeling that and feeling that concern. And I don't know. I think we have to just remind ourselves, like, you know, just a loving, unjudgmental presence
Mhm.
is a big deal. You know, like
Mhm.
I know Eberstadt brought that up in her book, Home Alone America, which I think we've both read. That was a
Yeah,
really
yeah.
insightful book. And I love learning all perspectives. So but I think she was just talking about just even having like a warm body, basically, like and the thing
Yeah.
is too, like, I know that, like, for us, because we love our children so much, we are going to be like, we love them, we love our children, so it's like,
Mhm.
it's a loving presence, unjudgmental, just there. Even that is like, means a lot and goes a long way. And
Mhm.
so it's like just reminding yourself about that. And yeah, like, could we give more? Yeah, I mean, thing is, like, so if you I don't know, we have to be able to, like, I think part of it is like, to do the creative work does kind of, it's like you're emptying yourself, but you're kind of getting filled by that process. And so then you have more to offer your children. Like, you can kind of, in terms of
Yes.
giving them more attention, you can
Yes.
actually give them more attention, in like in a way where you're not just like literally like trying to give on empty, like. And it's a
Yeah.
very hard thing for me to accept, because again, like, pride makes me think like, I can't, no, I'm never going to be like, empty. I can always give, give, give. And it's just like,
Mhm.
because I want so much to give. I want to give so much. And
Mhm.
yet, like, if I don't take some of the time to pay attention to some of the things that are inside my heart and mind, then it's like, well, and attend to those things, then it's almost like you haven't kind of filled up in order to give out more attention to your children. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. It's such a simple, it's probably a very simple concept, but it's just, I don't know, to really accept it and then like incorporate a practice of doing that is like, can be the hard part. Because again, it's like, if you're just 18 and you're an autonomous person, you're just like, oh, I like, there's just, you don't have to like rely on other people,
Yeah.
you can just go and do your thing that you need to do to whatever. But it's just like with children, and then, just, you have to rely on somebody else to watch the kids or be with them. Um, and honestly, like, I just, enjoy their company so much that I'm just like, it's always like I'm always torn a bit, because like, I don't really want to go off and do something. But then again, I know if I go off and do something creative, then I can like come back and be, there's
Yeah.
something where it's like, oh, like, that was really re-energizing for me, and I'm even more able to be present with them. So yeah.
And I found too that if and it sounds so weird, but the nights that I stay up super late
Mhm.
studying, the next morning, even though I'm physically tired, mentally, I'm like, let's go, kids. Let's do something fun because I feel energized and I feel full because I got to do the stuff that I needed to do. I got out all of my emotions and my thoughts last night. So now it's like I can give all of my time to you. And I just love that. I love that I can when I create, I can be a better mother to my children.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just kind of accepting that, like, it's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay. Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with you, that's kind of how you are wired, in a sense. It's
Mhm.
like, um, because I mean, every person has something to offer. And I think there's, while mothering is incredible and all, like, it's a very full type of role, again, children do grow up to and go on
Mhm.
to live their own lives. And so it's like, to show them, like, I guess for me, that one of the biggest things, and I don't mean to harp on it or reiterate it too much, but it's just to show them what it means to be motivated for your own, like, out of your
Yeah.
own, just to be motivated to do something and like want to learn something or create something. I think there's something really quite powerful about that, because ultimately, like, we are kind of intrinsically, we are like inherently kind of creative.
Yeah.
Everybody's creative. Like, you end up creating your day, with like your attitude or what you choose to do, or this, that, or the other. And so, yeah, we're all creative. We all have creative capacities. Some people have a much larger creative capacity in terms of maybe the traditional creative forms or art forms, but
Mhm.
and some people have it in maybe less identifiable ways, but they're still creating. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I think the idea of like, just again, showing that intrinsic motivation, and just saying, like, also to be able to value something that's like it's almost like that, the still small voice, or like this, like, that's always how it can come to me, like, as poems, where you just hear something in your head, or you see
Mhm.
these words or whatever. And it's kind of like honoring that, and like taking something that's a little seed and being able to like take the time to plant it and try to cultivate it, some like water it, see it grow. I think that can show something quite powerful for children too, because you know in a way, like the children are also like, they grow little bit by bit every day, you know, and you look back and you're like,
Yeah.
how did they get so big? And things like that. But like, they are creative. We're all creative forms. We're creative, and we're like, we are
Mhm.
creations. And so, you know, children are like, when we value the kind of the small, like I said, that small idea or whatever, that spark, and let it like kind of give it a place. It also reflects how we nurture, like nurturing that creative process is also a way to kind of show it, that we nurture also our children. Like, there's something about the both that are nurturing, you know, and in
Mhm.
a way, like to be able to nurture both is to have like sort of speak to the fact that both are important, you know, both are important.
Yeah.
And for children, they will have their also their own ideas, their own things that they want to do, and often it's hugely ambitious, like, you know, let's create a whole, my son will be like, let's make a robot, like, you know, really make a robot. And
Oh.
yeah, oh yeah, it's amazing that he wants to do that, and so great. But often, like, you know, you're also kind of thinking about like, okay, how can we go ahead and try and do that? Maybe we could do that with cardboard boxes, and then if we
Mhm.
pick up some circuitry from Lowe's, we can actually like make it with like circuits and stuff. But it's like,
Yeah.
I think that is interesting, because you're also getting, like, as children develop and have their own creative interest, I think it gets a bit more challenging, because you're kind of like trying to give time and attention to what they're wanting to do, and sort of provide resources for that for each of the children.
Mhm.
But then you're also like, all right, my thing that I want to get back to writing, or, you know, finishing reading. Um,
Mhm.
so it is always like a question of time. But I think that just showing them that, like, hey, it does matter to like listen to that still small voice, is
Yeah.
something that hopefully could be good for them to cultivate in their life too.
Mhm. Oh, no, I agree with all of that. That was just, so beautifully put.
Oh my gosh, you're so sweet. Thank you, Sam. Thank
Well,
you.
how you were talking about the seed and
Yeah.
how it's growing, and I found with, reading and studying and learning when I started all of this, because, for a long time, I I also hate using this term, losing myself. I lost myself, and, then I started doing a lot of these things for myself, and, at the beginning, I was like, "I knew nothing," and, I mean, I still know nothing. There's just so much to learn, but, um, but it grows over time, and that's just such a wonderful thing, and then how you tied it in with, how it's like poetry. I have little time to write here and there, and then when I finally, um, step back and look at all of it, I'm like, oh, I have like 20, 30 pages of all of this. And I did actually create something. And it's just, oh, it's such a good feeling.
It is. It really, really is. And like, it's just like little, you know, that's why it's so reflective, you know, because again, like
Mhm.
children grow so like every day, but you don't always notice quite how much they've grown until you look back, and then you're like, wow, you know, again, like, how did they get so tall? How do they, you know, and so
Yeah.
you don't always see how every day there's a little bit that's changing or growing or
Mhm.
learning or whatever. But it's happening, you know, it's happening.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of that like nurturing is just kind of like continues to help that process along. But you
Mhm.
can't always, it's hard to on just any given day see like any progress, you know.
Right.
But you know,
Right.
but
I feel that.
especially when the windows have still not been washed after X amount of years. No, I'm just kidding. Kind of, but it's like, you know, I think there are certain things that I think too, like it's just, yeah, like I wonder, like, yes, I think that sometimes we are given, like, we are all in our made in our we are all made in our uniqueness, you know. And so there's a way
Mhm.
in which it's like, well, I have to kind of trust that, like, I am the mother for my children. So like, yes, I might be a little bit of an oddball. I might have this crazy, you know, yearning to create, and also yearning to be fully present as a mother with them. But like, that is something that, you know, it's kind of like, just as we see our children as unique gifts to us with their unique personalities and like just how they are,
Yeah.
that's also like what we give to them. And it's, you know, it's hard, it's easy to think like, well, I could be doing better on this, that, and the other, this, that, and the other, this, that, and the other. But it's like, you know, you are just trying to do your best And
Yeah.
and that's okay. Like that is enough. And for the things that you need to work out to figure out how to be more functional, then just, that's, again, just do your best to figure out what that is. And I think that it's, yeah, I don't know. I think it's just kind of like remembering that, because sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what if all they remember is like the fact that the kitchen was a mess. Not that the kitchen is always a mess, but it can get messy. And sometimes I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like, are they just gonna remember that, like, that it was messy and not like, I don't know, it's I don't know. I just like can think about that. Like, I don't want them to feel like they're in, a chaotic environment because I'm reading a book for, 10 minutes when I should really be tidying the counter,
Mhm.
But then again, they see me doing that, and maybe that offers them something different that, somebody else could glean something from a clean countertop, like
Yeah.
24/7 or something. So it's just, we offer different things because we're all unique individuals. So yeah.
Yeah. And I wonder too if we feel this strong desire to create even more because our children are younger, and
Hmm.
because they require more of a demand, because they're just all over the place, and I think the more demand there is, the more that I want to create.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I wonder if that's going
That's
to
interesting.
change as my children get older.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I can feel that too. I can feel that too, which is weird because it's almost like, it's weird. For some people, it'd be the opposite. Like, they're so drained that they're like, I can't even think of a full sentence. But for me, it's the opposite. It's
Yeah.
like
Oh, me too.
yeah, it's like literally the opposite. It's like the more demand, the more I have, like, that I just am bursting at the seams to like do something with, and I don't know. It's very, very strange because, like I said, for most people, they're just like, I can barely hold a coherent conversation. Meanwhile, for me, I'm just like, I'm literally like eager to just like talk about, philosophical ideas and questions, and like,
Yeah.
and like logical, questions that would come up next, or counterpoints. It's like, I really, really yearn for that. And even more as the demand is
Mhm.
higher on me with the
Mhm.
children being littler, and, just needing more attention and needing more help with things, shoes, and, bathroom trips and food, and, like wiping up things that might have been spilled, things like that. So I, I don't know. What do you think? Why? What do you think? Why do you think that might be for us, Sam? Why do you think it might be like that? Is
I
there an
don't
explanation?
know. I have no idea, because it almost feels like we're just choosing to suffer more. like, 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 I've already got a full plate. Let me also study Heidegger.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
That's my life right now.
Oh my gosh, that makes me laugh so much. Like, that's so funny and so
like,
relatable.
like when I listen to your podcast on Fridays, I am literally pacing the kitchen, getting the girls breakfast, doing the dishes, and then I'm also like typing at the same time and just thinking, and it just doesn't stop. It never stops.
Wow, yeah, I completely relate to that. I completely relate to that. Oh, and yeah, it's like, maybe it's like, why are you doing this to yourself? But at the same time, it's like I said, it's like, I just literally haven't found the off button. I can't tell you
Yep.
why, but I just do. And it's like, it's just this like force. I don't know. It's very interesting. And I I don't know. I think that it does, when you're talking about suffering, that's another topic lately I had been thinking a lot about,
Oh.
like the balance, like the idea of suffering and humility. But it's like, I don't know, maybe there's a type of like refining that can happen in that like type of struggle or
Mhm.
suffering. There's something that can be quite, challenging about it mentally, and physically too. Like, I think for me, it's like, picking up children, nursing, doing
Mhm.
this. Like, I'm like, I have two boys and a girl, and the boys are very like, gregarious, like
Yeah.
yeah, like just rambunctious, and like, and then my girlie, she like, I mean, we're just like, I just have so much affection, like, just like hugging, holding, picking up,
Yeah.
doing this, like changing shoes, all of that good stuff. So it's like, there's something physically and mentally, like, you're on like just all the time. And
It's
I
like
don't.
my mentality has to match my physical.
Yeah, yeah. But it's funny because it's like there's already so much mental stimulation with children as it is. So what is it about like just like, yeah, I just want to go ahead and add on like, reading, Merleau-Ponty's like the phenomenology of perception. Maybe it's
Mhm.
just the idea of like it just, I don't know. It's like I pace with that curiosity level
Mhm.
of children. But then for me, obviously it's at like, we can read, just bigger books or books like not like
Mhm.
I'm, by no stretch of the imagination, like hyper well read or like super well versed in like technical philosophy, but I love it. Like I'll still read it and
Oh, me
just try
too.
to just let it rush over me. I know that like if I just am open to it, I'll get something out of it. Like I know that I'll get something that
Yeah.
I can work with or even just question or grapple through. So I don't know if it's like, I don't know why, I can't explain it either, but it is fascinating because I really can resonate with that as like a creative
Mhm.
mother, where it's like it's even like it's even like more of a sense of wanting to do those things, when really like I don't know, maybe for other people they're like, no, like I'll just put a pause on that and
Yeah, I'm like, I
I'll
can't pause this. I'm like, it's time to study. I need to learn more. And,
yeah,
and,
there's
and I and
yeah.
I swear, the more the more breakthroughs I have, the more I learn, the more my will to study is.
Oh,
And it's just like
yeah.
trickling into my daytime. And I'm like, this is a problem, but it's also wonderful.
Oh yeah. Oh, and do you ever just feel like sometimes I just like wish I could like read faster? Like I just want to like
Yes.
I'm like, no, I want to just like I want to absorb all of this and then
Yeah,
I want to read this. I want to read this. I just like yeah, it's wild.
it
But
is.
yeah, I definitely can resonate with that so much. And um I don't know. I mean, I think there is sometimes like when it comes to books, I can definitely get kind of like suddenly I'm like, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to stick to this one book. And then suddenly I'm reading 4 books and I'm like, okay,
Me too.
yes, yes. And it's just like, okay, get back to like, get back to, to what you were reading, and I don't know. I think there can be a place for like, diversifying your reading and sort of branching
Mhm.
out in the midst of like reading one particular thing. I think it can be really fun to see how books converse with each other.
Mhm.
Um, but it's just like I don't know, there's just something about like suddenly you just feel like, oh, I just really feel like I need to be reading this right now. I can't really
Yeah.
tell you why, but I do. And or it's like sparked interest from other people who you're conversing with philosophically or like in the lit world, and it's just like you kind of suddenly have a spark to kind of visit that yourself and then sort of see how it ties into maybe other things you're reading. And often I do find just these huge like like you're saying, breakthroughs or connections between things.
Mhm.
um but yeah, sometimes like I have to kind of like scale back a bit and like kind of go back to like, okay, let me finish this project and then I'll move on to
Mhm.
the next thing. um but yeah, yeah, it's quite interesting. And I do, it's almost like the both mothering and creative acts, because they're so kind of all, I mean, I feel like maybe I've used this language a bit, but like they are quite all consuming, they're quite all encompassing.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I think that maybe the thing that we're just trying to do is try to figure out how those things can really indeed like help one another out, like how can the
Yeah.
two work in conjunction with each other.
Mhm.
um and yeah, maybe the season is just, it will just be a bit like it is, like we've been describing how it is like. And
Mhm.
I hope that can give people like a very, hopefully like a really real and raw insight to what daily life looks like as
Yeah.
creative mothers. Because um if you don't experience it, like we're saying, it's hard to really put it into words. But if we could, we're trying to put into words what exactly it feels like on a daily basis, what it is like experientially like, or even phenomenologically like, to be a creative mother. There's just a certain way that it goes. And there's certain
Mhm.
things that are like taking, that are kind of demanding your attention. um but it's also like you want to give that attention. And
Right.
then And so yeah, I think it's interesting, and I hope that it kind of gives a bit of a window into what that is like, and
Mm.
why that might be a unique situation. But I'm sure most people find themselves multitasking. I just think that this is a particularly unique multitasking.
I agree. I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But Sam, I could talk with you for like ever and ever and ever.
Oh,
But
me too.
it's so wonderful. And I really would like, I think we should write a book called Being a Mother in Time. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. That is perfect.
I'm
That just made my night.
oh my gosh.
Mother in time.
Because I would love to like tap more into like your Heidegger studies, because I know you've been reading Heidegger, and just sort of thinking about like what does it mean to be. He has this concept of being, and it's almost gender neutral, but like what does it mean? Like we're all like specific beings in specific bodies, and like what
Mhm.
does it mean in particular roles? So it's like, what does it mean to be a being as a mother?
Mhm.
So yes, that could be a really fun topic to dive into on
Yeah,
another talk.
definitely.
But thank you so
Definitely.
much, Sam. I really appreciate your time tonight.
Oh,
And
thank you.
yeah, I just love talking with you. It's been a joy, and I hope we do this again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sam. And please go check
Okay.
out Sam's YouTube channel. It's wonderful, and it's filled with so many beautiful things. So I'm really happy for the times you can sneak away and like do your recordings. So we can all benefit from it. Yeah. But thank you, Sam. Hope you have a great evening.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.